I'm Megan and I'm here with School Report to bring you some solemn news. Stephen Hawking died in the early hours of Wednesday, 14th of March at age 76. In 1963, Hawking was diagnosed with motor neuron disease and it was said he only had 2 years left to live. Yet 50 years later he dies in 2018. Hawking discovered the theory of black holes, understanding the universe, why it exists and all in physics. We now go to Izzy to interview physics teachers Mr. Godfrey and Mr. Bayes on Stephen Hawking's legacy.
What was your initial reaction to Stephen Hawking's death?
One of immense sadness, I think. So he was one of the greatest minds in physics of kind of recent generations, probably of all time.
What legacy did Stephen Hawking leave behind on the science community?
His work with studying black holes. So he discovered this kind of unusual radiation that was emitted from black holes, which was completely unexpected, and that has since become known as Hawking radiation. So he's had a interesting phenomenon in science named after him.
Why should young people today know who Stephen Hawking is?
As well as being a very important man in the world of physics, he was also kind of quite a recognisable public figure. He was on kind of made TV shows and things like Simpsons and Big Bang Theory, and he kind of become like a cult hero in that respect. I think that that's not going to go away. He's going to continue to be very recognisable, and as his work continues to be important.
One of the things that young people can take from that is even if you're told that it's unlikely that you're going to be successful in something, then if you want to persevere, then there's every chance that you can be successful if you plough on through.
Have you watched any documentaries on him?
I've watched The Theory of Everything, which was interesting to learn about his life.
How did you feel when he passed away?
Quite sad, but he was really successful. He was an icon for everyone to look up to.
Yeah.
What do you think was the most inspiring thing about Stephen Hawking?
I think, as well as the kind of the great theories and the great work that he did for physics, the way that he continued on and has then achieved in that is really inspiring and showing about kind of determination and resilience in things like learning, where perhaps we're more used to talking about that attitude with sports people and in less academic fields perhaps.
Today, Stephen Hawking is a huge inspiration to many, not only through his groundbreaking work in physics, but also his resilient attitude to life. We'll leave you now with one of his most famous quotes. However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at.
On Tuesday the 20th of February, Jordan Batt became a victim of knife crime. He recalls the sight of knives changed everything. In 2017, 12,980 knife crimes occurred in London. That's 2,452 more than the equivalent year. Recent statistics show our hospitals are treating around 12 people each day who have been attacked with a knife. Here we have Jemima talking to Emily Ward, a police cadet.
Do you feel like the government are doing enough to prevent knife crime in London?
I think with the amount of funding that they have, they're doing enough they can, because obviously it's hard because there's been cuts from the government. But overall, they can do as much as they want. They can, the police can arrest people, they can stop and search people and take knives off of people. But it's so easy to get a knife. You can just go into your kitchen and get a knife. So I think the main focus should be on educating young people about the attitude towards having a knife and the effects it can have, and how just carrying a knife can ruin your life.
As a sociologist, why do you think young people engage in knife crime in the UK?
Okay, so we live in Twickenham or near Twickenham, so knife crime is really low in our areas. But if you go to places like Hackney and Lewisham, where there's high levels of gangs, people are more likely to engage in knife crime for two reasons. One of them is that guns are more difficult to get hold of, and two, it's because they do it for fear of protection. So lots of people who carry knives don't do it because they want to attack people, it's because they're afraid. And that happens to lots of communities where young people aren't able to stay in school. They see their older brothers and sisters and cousins and aunties and uncles in these areas of poverty, which means that they're quite poor, they don't have a lot of money, and they have to try and make money by doing things that are criminal.
What are the police forces trying to do to prevent knife crime in London?
Well, in 2015, the Metropolitan Police launched an operation to reduce knife crime and obviously the families that are affected by it. So that's involved police cadets carrying out 700 test purchasing operations. So that means they'll go to a shop, try and buy a knife, and if the shop sell them a knife, then obviously they'll be cautioned or get arrested.
Sadiq Khan has started a campaign called London Needs You Alive, and in a statement has proclaimed, "As Mayor of London, I'm asking you to join me in telling our young people that London needs them alive and wants them to know how important they are, what they can achieve in the city, and that they shouldn't put their futures at risk by carrying a knife." He's created the Young Londoners Fund to help vulnerable teenagers and young adults who've been dejected or left behind and work with them to prevent them from leading a life in crime. The 3-year fund will see £10 million a year made available for local communities, charities and schools, and will hopefully prevent them from leading a life in crime.
Hello and welcome back to Wargrave News. What would you do if your town was turning off its taps? This is a question running in the worried minds of civilians living in Cape Town at the moment. Unfortunately, Cape Town is running out of water, and on April the 12th it's scheduled to turn off its taps completely. This day will be called Day Zero. A flooded valley which usually supports Cape Town with most of its water has had almost no rain. It's the worst drought in more than a century. Residents are allowed to use 50 litres of water per person per day. People are already collecting water in preparation for Day Zero. Once the taps are finally switched off, residents will receive 25 litres of water a day from collection points. With Day Zero approaching, residents of Cape Town hope that the rain will finally come. Now over to Shanali at Wargrave, a school in Twickenham, with more information.
Thank you, Eve. Queues are already forming at local springs and locals are scared of running out of water. Police are hunting for rule breakers such as illegal car washers who are going over their daily limit. Here with me today is a local geography teacher, Mr. Jones, who is concerned about the state Cape Town will be left in. Mr. Jones, what have you heard about the Cape Town crisis?
Well, fun enough, we did a part of it in a lesson last week with Year 10s. So we were doing about sustainable towns and cities, and it came up in part of that.
What concerns you the most about this Cape Town crisis?
I think it will be the poorest members of society who will be affected by it. So the people who are going to lose, do not have the water, are going to be the poorest people living in the townships.
Where do you think this problem originated from in the first place?
As I say, probably the richer members of society that use water as if it's going to be there all the time, whereas in certain places it isn't if they don't manage it properly.
Do you think it's necessary for the government to carry out such drastic decisions?
I think they need to do something, but this does sound very drastic because it's the richer people who have access to lots of water, who are cleaning their cars, who have lovely gardens. That's fine, but there's going to be other people who just want some water to wash or to cook some food or something like that are going to be really affected by it.
Absolutely. Finally, how do you think this problem can be resolved?
That's a hard one. I mean, that's one of the hardest questions, isn't it? Water management of water. Maybe they need to look at the ways in which people use. Maybe the richer people, how they're looking at how they're using the water, what sort of things they're using it for. Is it necessary to wash their cars every month or something like that? If we can encourage scientists and people like that, the young people, to come up with some ideas, some innovative ideas, that would be great. But I don't know what those ideas are.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Back to the studio.
Some may disagree, but we are so lucky here in the UK to have as much access as we do to rain and clean water, in comparison to Cape Town, who, from recent weather reports, won't be seeing rain for the next few weeks. That's all for today. Thank you for watching Wargrave's BBC School Report 2018.